To talk a bit more about that deal, I'm very pleased to be joined now on the line by Wyn Grant. He's a Professor of International Relations at Warwick University in the United Kingdom. Thanks very much for speaking to us on the programme, Professor. First of all, this deal, as we heard in the report, will bring in more money and about 40% increase in patrols along the French coast. Do you think it's going to have a big impact?
Well, it'll have some impact, but we have to remember we're talking about 175 kilometres of beaches and dunes that have to be patrolled, and that's not an easy task. Clearly, having additional personnel available will be a help, but as the Home Secretary herself has admitted, this is not a silver bullet that will solve the problem.
And we're looking at images there of the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, at that meeting here in Paris where this deal was agreed. And it is perhaps worth emphasising that there's been quite a bit of distrust in recent months between the governments in London and Paris, particularly during the brief but rather turbulent tenure of Liz Truss. Do you think that this deal suggests that relations are now going to improve?
I think relations are going to improve. I'm sure Rishi Sunak, the new Prime Minister, is very determined that there should be better cooperation between France and the UK on this and other issues. And I think this is a hopeful sign that we are going to make progress.
Now, since the era of Theresa May, a good couple of years now, the United Kingdom has had what's known as a policy of hostile environment, making it very hard for asylum seekers, economic migrants to both reach the United Kingdom and to settle there. So I suppose there are probably many people out there wondering, why are people so determined to reach the UK rather than staying in France, given that the UK does, in its own language, have a hostility towards these migrants?
Well, I think part of this is that it's very easy to work in the black economy in the UK, much more so than in France, because we don't have identity cards. So you can find work. Also, a lot of these people speak English and they may have friends and relatives in the UK, or indeed contacts that are provided for them by criminal gangs. So there are all sorts of reasons why they might want to come to the UK, even if they don't get a very warm welcome in terms of asylum status.
Indeed, and that lack of warm welcome has really been emphasised in recent weeks by what's going on at one particular processing centre in Kent in England. There appear to be a lot of delays on the UK government side in terms of processing people who are applying for asylum. What can you tell us about that? Why are these delays in assessing and processing people's claims?
Well, I think it's simply the sheer numbers of people who arrived in recent weeks and months. The processing centre at Manston in Kent, which you referred to, has certainly been completely overwhelmed. There have been a complete breakdown, really, in that facility and outbreaks of ill health and so on. So there does need to be a revision, I think, of domestic policy in the UK on this issue and more resources devoted to processing the claims that are being made.
Well, you talk about more resources, and at least under the government of Boris Johnson, we knew what one of the policies was. This was a rather controversial one, to send some people who were applying to live in the UK to Rwanda. Do we know what's happening with that plan? Is it still expected to go ahead?
Well, the government would like it to go ahead, but it is facing legal challenges. And until the courts make a ruling on those legal challenges, they can't proceed. And I think many people think even if it did proceed, it would only deal with relatively small numbers of people compared to those that are arriving.
Presumably then they're hoping it would be a deterrent for those crossing the channel, even though so far, as you're suggesting, it hasn't achieved that aim.
Well, the hope of the government is that it would be a deterrent. Whether it would, in fact, I think is open to question, because I don't think very many people would actually be sent to Rwanda, and people would calculate they could get into the UK and find some means of staying here.
Professor Wyn Grant, thanks very much indeed, sir.